Hello gamers, this is a little announcement to say that I'll be guesting at 2 cons in the next 2 weeks. The first is AmiCon in Dublin on the weekend of the 15th, and the second is Anime North in Toronto on the weekend of the 22nd. I'll be there for all days of both cons, and at Dublin I'll be holding a special Eyepatch Wolves booth where I'll be selling this exclusive t-shirt. If you're a real fan, you'll be at both conventions. See you then. So in 2001, there was this TV show called Scrubs, and Scrubs starred Zach Braff and was this very whimsical medical drama set in this vaguely surreal, nearly fantasy hospital, and it contained a bunch of wacky characters, like Dr. Cox, who would constantly belittle the junior doctors, as well as Dr. Kelso, who is like the evil overlord of the hospital, and a janitor, who is just this maniacally evil custodial worker. Scrubs has a weird legacy. I think while like a lot of the early seasons are remembered pretty fondly by myself and my millennial compatriots, it also had a pretty hard fall off, with the later seasons declining dramatically in quality, and in generally just isn't a show that's aged very well. But I'd argue the reason that it hasn't aged well isn't because it's like problematic or just anything like overtly negative. It's because Scrubs, I think you could argue, is like a central pillar of what I'm going to call millennial cringe I can has cheeseburger comedy. The show was like very whimsical in how it handled its comedy. Its characters were always like full of optimism and joy, and they would like jump on each other's backs and pretend to be eagles. That happened many times. And in general, it was just like a very goofy, silly show. And it really now does feel like a show of a completely different time and era and sensibilities. Going back and watching like the early seasons now, it's kind of strange, but I would still say there was kind of something to Scrubs, and I think like it did get at the heart of like what it is to exist, at least in America, as like a hospital where you had like Dr. Cox. So, okay, you got JD in the middle, and JD is played by Zach Braff, and he is like this young, optimistic intern just trying to work his way up and survive the nightmare of being a medical student. On one side of him, you have then Dr. Cox, and Dr. Cox is like the brash, antagonistic, breaks all the rules, kind of fucking asshole of the hospital, but ultimately someone who only just really cares about medicine and making people better. He doesn't care about his patients' feelings. He doesn't care about what they think. He knows how to cure them. He wants to cure them. That's all he cares about. But then on the other hand, you have Dr. Kelso, who is like the chief of medicine. And this dude is a businessman. This dude just wants to make profit from people. He doesn't see a hospital as a place where people get healed. He sees it as a place to make profit. And I think that dynamic was like interesting, and there was something kind of real there, and there was something good. And like, while I wouldn't say every episode of Scrubs was like a banger, there were some genuinely great ones, and I think one of the best, and one that a lot of people remember it for, is the one starring Brendan Fraser, in which this character comes along that everyone, you know, really enjoys and loves, and then as it turns out, he has a really serious disease. Things don't go well, and it was just a very poignant and kind of sad episode that kind of grappled with morality, and it kind of grappled with not being able to accept that there's something wrong with someone you care about, and it was great. As things would go on, it would get worse. There's one episode, and I'll never fucking forget it. Hey, I'm re-recording this bit because I got a part wrong, but the episode I'm talking about is a bunch of shit happens in the hospital, as per usual, and the big emotional like crescendo of this episode is meant to be JD crying, and they kind of do it like everyone's just like, there goes JD, he's doing great, and he kind of just goes, and he has like a tear coming down. I don't know, I thought it was very silly. I didn't think it worked. Anyway, back to past John. And it's like exactly that kind of over sentimentality that Scrubs was like always kind of diving into, and sometimes it could pull it off and sometimes it couldn't. But yeah, it's a weird show. It's still one I have a lot of fondness for. I always really liked JD and Turk. I had a massive crush on Elliot, especially in season 2 when she got like the kind of the kind of shadow heart bangs, and look, I have a type. It doesn't matter. But yeah, so imagine my surprise when a couple of weeks ago I discovered that Scrubs is back with a brand new season in 2026, which is just insane. I really did not know how Scrubs was going to age, and one thing I'll tell you is that the staff of Scrubs have aged like fine wine. Physically, these are a bunch of fucking vampire people. Genuinely shocked at how good the staff look. Like, fair play to them. But humor-wise, it's weird, right? Because I feel like this show is extremely faithful to what Scrubs was because it kind of feels like old Scrubs. It kind of has that exact same style of humor. The only thing is, I think experiencing that humor in 2026 is like fucking insane. Like, Scrubs was like less biting than like a Parks and Rec. I feel like you couldn't even really do Parks and Rec anymore because Parks and Rec is too optimistic for what the world has become. You could do something like The Paper, or Paper, I can't remember what that sitcom was called. It was great. That was a good sitcom. You should check it out. That's like a little more cynical. That's a little more like hopeless in terms of what the world has become. Scrubs still does not feel like that. This feels like the 2001 show just kind of resurrected itself and started walking around again, making the exact same kind of jokes. And that is a really jarring feeling. It's also equally strange because in the later seasons of Scrubs, the Sacred Heart Hospital in which the entire thing takes place is demolished. And the final season in particular has this feeling of like, you can't go back. You can't resurrect what once was. Instead, you have to always move forward, always be advancing. Well, I guess you fucking can't. As this season has showed, it's the same hospital. It's actually a shocking amount of the staff that are come back. Basically everyone except people who died, like Dr. Kelso. It feels weird. There's now like a whole like host of new characters. There's like 4 or 5 new medical interns, and I'd say one of the problems with the new season is that generally those new characters just don't get a chance to breathe. Like even this one, Dr. Park, who is like this mean bisexual man who is like kind of taking over the Dr. Cox role of being like the constant asshole. I really enjoyed that character, but he just doesn't get enough time or story to really breathe. And I'd say that of nearly all the interns. There's like a weird love triangle that like goes away and then comes back and then goes away and comes back, and it's like some of it happens off camera and like breakups happen without it being shown, and it just feels like kind of strange. But I think the thing is, like, because you now no longer have Dr. Cox or Dr. Kelso, there is a feeling that the show is just very soft. Like, the conflicts this time around are more so just like the medical emergencies the staff face, and there's not that like battle between good and evil where is a hospital a place to make profit or is it a place to heal people? You don't really have that dynamic anymore. And so in a lot of ways the show even feels softer than it did in 2001, and it was a fucking soft ass show in 2001. And especially like, you know, nowadays when you have stuff like The Pit, which is just showing like the absolute hellscape that is modern medicine, compared to that, a show like Scrubs just feels out of time. But here's the thing, and I was talking to Foxcade about this as well, like he agrees that we were both watching this show and being like, man, this feels odd. But the more we watched it, the more we actually started to feel like, no, wait, actually, there's kind of something to this in that, like, yeah, this show is kind of pure escapism. This show actually does feel pretty alright, you know, like it's getting me. There's the odd decent joke, and like there's some stuff that just really doesn't like work, but there is stuff that it does feel good. And so as you're watching these new doctors, they do actually grow on you. Like, there's one doctor who's like a TikTok doctor, you know, she's like an influencer. And I would give any advice to any writers nowadays who want to make one of their characters the TikTok character. And that would be to leave the writing industry, because I'm fucking sick of seeing that. But you know what? They all actually do have like their own stuff going on, and the actors themselves are quite good and all kind of pulled me into those characters. I wouldn't say I loved any of them by the end of the season, but it got to the point where I was okay with them sharing space like with all these other characters who, like, you know, I already knew and liked. The only real misfire, I would say, is the HR lady. Basically, there's a character now, and her job is to always be like, oh, you can't say that because that's against the regulations of the hospital. And she's like very kooky and kind of silly. You know, this is another thing I was talking about with Fox. Fox was like, but in fairness, they did have the lawyer in the old show, and he was kind of like that. And my thought on that would be that the lawyer was funny. That was a desperate, broken human being trying to keep the hospital running, and there was a lot of like angst and kind of comedic tragedy in that character. The new HR lady is just kind of kooky. The cast particularly, like, they're still very good. Like, they're still a funny group of people with great comic timing, and it is entertaining watching them do their thing. And so, like, the more I settled into this new era of the show, the more I actually did find myself enjoying it. And I'm pretty surprised about that. But where the show, I think, actually comes around and starts being like kind of good is when Dr. Cox comes back into it in the final 2 episodes. And he at this point does not work in the hospital, and he's just there for the hell of it, only for them to find out that he has contracted some terrible illness. And this felt new. This felt interesting. Dr. Cox, this absolutely stalwart, kind of old school doctor who just harasses and abuses his staff constantly. Now we're seeing like this vulnerability from him. Now we're seeing this situation where like he can't handle it. And it just felt kind of fresh and new and interesting in a way that I really appreciated. Like, I thought it actually worked. And like by the final episode, I found myself invested. And the final 2 episodes as well are by far the strongest 2 episodes of the whole thing. They have all the best jokes and like moments that I actually like guffawed out loud, like moments that actually got me to laugh. And so yeah, when I saw, I'll be honest with you, like when I saw there was a new Scrubs, I was kind of ready to give it a watch, come on here and just beat the shit out of it, because what the fuck is there a new Scrubs doing in 2026? But in all honesty, they actually kind of won me over. I actually found myself enjoying this show, and it was nice to have like those little 20-minute slices of sitcom, because I feel like we're in a kind of drought era for sitcoms, and this actually kind of fulfilled that. Hey, look, I'm sitting down at my dinner, I want to watch something pleasant and I don't want to think too hard. Like, it nailed that, and I actually really enjoyed it. So yeah, take this as the most okay recommendation for Scrubs 2026. What a wild world we'd live in, folks.